we'll do a little reading from our work, we'll talk, and then just sort of have a discussion, and people can ask questions or participate in the discussion. Because I think there's so much to be said about healing from trauma, and there's all kinds of different trauma, of course. And it seems like so much of the work around this it tends to be done about dominant culture, mental health, should I say industry? I said it. So, and there's all sorts of ways to heal from trauma that are very effective, and each of us has, our own way, and then we have our cultural ways as well. And so there's a lot of diversity, and what works for you, and that's what we, want to value and honor.
One question that strikes me as I hear each of you talk and read, and obviously, Chris, I've known you for a while. There's a sense in the piece that you read of dealing with sort of the isolation of where you are. Babette, I also heard from you the aspect of fear and being able to overcome your own fear, and then certainly Tina talking about shame, stigma, and amongst all of this, then is that question of trust. How you've each described it a little bit, but how do you get to a place of trust in community that you need in your healing, in the healing process?
Survived intergenerational family trafficking, pornography, domestic violence, all those things. I was here in Minnesota, and I had to escape basically as a teenager. And yeah, there's been times in my life where I, have said I trust absolutely no one, that's the bottom line. And then there's other times, that I would recognize that there were people in my past that I trusted, perhaps few and far between. But I think that I've had both of those experiences, and both of those things are true. And I can also connect with people and feel connected and happy as well. So that's how it works for me. It's not just like one or the other, and that one is absolutely true. It's that I have, like Tina was talking about, these like layers, of experiences. And when I think about trust, I know what it feels like to not trust anybody. I know what it feels like to deeply trust like my grandmothers and a few other people. And then I know what it feels like to live in a world like I do now, and I had glimpses of in my past, where I feel like a very healthy connection to the world. I know there's many, bad things going on in this world, right? But I feel generally safe and trusting of the world. And for me, that was a long process of, coming back and getting my Indian name, and, being terrified, and excited at the same, like it's like you're like terrified out of your mind, and you're enlivened at the same time. And that was a long, years worth of journey for me to learn and become part of the Ojibwe community. Again, here in Minneapolis and Minnesota, I had also, like Tina and Babette, that really see me to place as healing. And coming back here and being in the same place where I was raped and otherwise tortured as a child and a young person, and then having to come back as an adult and having to just like drive down the freeway while I'm illegally speaking to someone on the phone, but actually then it was legal, and drive past a building where I had been raped, whatever, 25 years ago or whatever. There's so many layers, and people, I don't think, have a very good understanding when you've had so much chronic abuse, all of these different layers and all the different ways that we have to find to survive them. But I think I see that, that issue of trust, like you're talking about, and then also just really the issue of place. And, Tina found her place, and Babette and I, came back to Minnesota and found our place and our communities here. So that's profound healing.
A lot of us who were raised in alcoholic homes with all that violence and sexual violence and watching all the trauma happening to other people, and then eventually it happens to us, we became really good at scanning people. I mean, I walk into a room and I'm just scanning because I did that as a child. So we're very we're good at that. And we need to acknowledge ourselves as being good at that, that how we can scan people. But somehow I came out of that whole all of that almost trusting too much. But I also was very desperate at one point in my life. I didn't understand what this life was about. Why is there so much pain in this life? You know, I mean, it just seemed ridiculous that we just grow up and get married, have kids, get a job. I mean, it just seems so mundane. Like there's got to be more to life than this. And then a lot of pain, a lot of abuse. I really needed to make sense of this world because it just made no sense to me. And when I started connecting to the culture, one of the first things that amazed me was the East direction being a new day, a new beginning, a second chance. I love that about the East direction, and the South direction about the Creator's garden having everything that we need, everything to heal with, everything. We just lay on the ground, lay in a river, sit by a tree, all the medicines, the sage, the tobacco, the cedar, and then the West direction, the cleansing, the thunderbirds, and I love the thunder beings, and learning about the cleansing and sweat lodges. But it was the North direction, Noon, that really shocked me, because what it says is there's a place for our pain and our sorrow is in the North direction. And if we allow ourselves to heal in the North direction and go through that pain and sorrow and not stop it with a drug or alcohol, we will find our strength and endurance, and we will also find our gifts. And that just amazed me that there's a place for this pain in this world. And the deeper I got into cultural ways, I trusted the spirits. I trusted the Kishimani, the kind and loving great spirit. I just couldn't trust myself around people because I just constantly met abusive people, constantly. Like it was like, can you really get out of these homes and not just constantly be abused? I even had a friend, I said, you gotta look, do I have a sign on my back? You know, this is ridiculous. I just couldn't get out of these patterns. But I could trust the Creator. I could trust the spirits. And I could trust that if I took charge of my life and said, I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to change my life, which was a lot of work, changing my own life. But I wanted to live violence free. And I've got to do that. I met somebody I've been married to 33 years, and to a nonviolent person. And I never thought that could happen, but they hear what's our desires in our heart, and they hear our vision for our life. And so I still sometimes, I'm either not trusting at all or I'm trusting too much. I'm still trying to work on that balance with that. But when I get in that kind of frantic thing about trust, I just trust Geshemani do. I trust the Creator's plan. And people, like I said in my writing, did the Creator send those people? You know, I think the Creator did. They send people into your life. And sometimes they might send one where you got to really use your intuition. And if you feel that, and I try to teach the women that I'm teaching right now about that intuition, because I said, why do you think they leave that out of your education? About your intuition that will tell you to run, get out of there? Or why do you think they leave out all about your dreams? There's a lot of guidance there in our dreams, and our intuition will guide us. How many times have you said, I wish I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. Why didn't I listen to myself? You know, and I got to a point where I finally started listening to myself.
For me, trust trust in community came when I was able to trust myself. When I realized that I was like the reason behind me making all of these decisions. And what was because I didn't trust myself was because I was always searching to fill some need. When I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm not listening to myself because I'm just trying to get through the day. I'm just trying to survive. And I don't need to be in survival mode anymore. I can sit back and I can be like, I'm safe, I'm secure, I can trust my intuition, I know what's best. And on top of that, that trust within myself overflows into trusting my community. And I used to think that I was too trusting, but I wanted to reframe that and tell myself that I actually just give people the benefit of the doubt because that's what I hope that they'll do for me. I hope that if if they know my past, if they don't know my past, if they can feel my energy now and they can, trust their own selves um, to read my energy, if they can give me the benefit of the doubt, I want to be able to allow them to receive that from me. That and it starts with our own healing, and then anything else that is overflow can go out to other people. So yeah.
I love what you said, Quintina, about like source, God, get you money due, and what happened, because it was intergenerational in my family too, is that my grandmother's mother was taken by her dad, who was abusive, and she was put into a mental institution. This was back in like the 20s when my grandma was 4, and my grandma did not see her again. And so my grandma grew up with that absence and that loss. And she was the kindest, most loving person that you can imagine. I mean, everybody loved her. She was such a good person. And I know she was my like guiding star to show me how I could be in the world so that I didn't become one of the, bad people. And yet she wouldn't say that she wouldn't tell anyone she loved them. And she had a number of children. I was the only person that she ever said, I love you to. And I grew up in a situation where my animals and the people around me that I cared about were purposely hurt by my family members. And so the story that went with that was that anyone or anything that I loved would be hurt. So I luckily was able to continue to love, but I did what my grandma did. And I wouldn't tell people I love them because that could get them hurt. So I was protecting them through that silence. Even though I love them, it was like so hard for me to show that because of the pain that was an intergenerational pain. And it was Babette went through a hard time. And that was when I said, I have to start telling people I love them, and I started putting my tobacco out and saying, please help me get you money due to live this day out of love. And it's like just completely changed my life to not have to contain my sense of love, because I think I'm protecting people by doing that, to have that understanding, be able to unpack that bundle and let it go, and it just gives it just makes everything so much better.
I just had a question of when was I able to trust somebody enough to marry them? I like that question. I just have to tell you that I carried quite a bundle around with me on my back, and because every person I've met in my life were violent. I just told you one of my stories. I have a lot of hat boxes of violence, to the point where I thought something was wrong with me. And so when I met my husband, his name's Skip Sandman, some of you might know him. We lived in this house that we live in now, and he would get off work and I would watch him get off work And he started walking towards the house. And my thoughts were, he's going to go nuts. He's going to bust the windows up. He's going to knock the door down, throw the refrigerator on the floor. He's going to tear up the house. I just know it. The poor guy was just walking into the house from work. And I'm thinking all this stuff. And I knew enough to go, stop it. He hasn't done that yet. And then I was looking at him like, how in the world are we getting along for 3 weeks? Shouldn't we argue? And then I would try to argue with him because that's all I knew. And he would just say, I did all my fighting in Vietnam. I'm not going to argue with you. Well, it truly did leave me just sitting alone with it. Like, if you don't have someone to argue with, you really can't argue. And that happened for a while. But then one day, a bunch of women and I went out into the woods and we just played all day in the woods. And I was supposed to be back for a retirement party from his coworker. All of a sudden I go, oh, what time is it? And then they said it was late. And I said, I gotta get back. Yeah, I'm gonna miss the party. And then they all got worried too, because they're all formerly battered women too, racing like crazy to get me in the house. And I ran in the house out of breath and just, I'll jump in the shower. And he's looking at me like, well, if you want to go in the shower, but I want to show you what I made. And I'm like, what? Come here, I want to show you what I made. And I was like, I'm late. He goes, yeah, but I want to show you what I made. And he made a roach for his dance outfit. It was really nice. And I admired it for a while. And I said, do you think I should get ready for that party? He goes, yeah. That's when I knew there is no violent man, woman out there that would ever put up with how late I was, how dirty I was from rolling around in the woods, just laying in leaves, ever would put up with that without being suspicious of who you're with and who are you, effing and all this stuff. He just was like, well, if you want to take a shower, yeah. And then we did go to the party. Nothing. That's when I knew this is a nonviolent person here. Oh my gosh. And then I had to adjust to not having to survive him, because that's all I've been doing my whole life, is surviving people from childhood all the way up. But I wanted it so bad. I knew it was out there. It existed. I had to believe that love exists, and it does. But yeah, I had to drop that bundle. I had to turn around, open it up, dig through it, say that's enough, laying this trip on him. You're not going to bang him over the head with your bundle from your past. Then I wanted to sabotage the relationship with him once, and I grabbed a mirror and I said, that's enough. Haven't you put up with enough shit in your life? Go ahead and jump off the cliff and allow yourself to be loved, because love all of a sudden was terrifying. And then I read a poem by a native artist. I just opened it up and she said, yeah, go ahead and jump off that cliff, because you know what? You're either going to learn to fly or land on your feet. Oh, and this one real quick thing. This woman I worked with, I said, all men are jerks. She goes, yep, to you they are. I said, what do you mean to me they are? I said, well, they are. And she goes, yeah, to you they are. I said, what do you mean? She goes, Babette, if that's all you're going to see in this world, that's all you're going to meet is jerks. You need to start believing that there's good people in the world that aren't violent. And that's a journey.